So let's talk about this. So talk about process from your standpoint. How important is a process for businesses?
It's crucial because without a process, everything can fall apart. There's no checks and balances if there's no process.
Hey, what's up, folks? Grandis and Shines from Seduire International, and welcome to this edition of our mastermind discussion. Today, we are going to be talking about the accountability process. Past video, we talked about the 7 skill sets or the 7 sub-skill sets of accountability. There are 7 core skill sets plus how that is operational in the conversation when you have that with one of your subordinates or anyone else. But today, we're going to talk about the process. Instilling the process is extremely important because now you have the availability to find the defect, but now how do we correct the defect? So we'll be talking about the process that we instilled in organizations called T.R.U.T.H, accountability process. That's an acronym. We'll be explaining that. But before we dive into our conversation, let me introduce 2 of my favorite consultants. To my left, I have Miss
Yasmin Murray with Seduire International.
And to my right, I have...
It's Al Gleason, the curator of nonsense.
There we have it. Curator of nonsense. I said consultants, but coaches, consultants, trainers, all that good stuff, right? So let's dive into our conversation. When we talk about accountability, when we talk about a process, we talk about the business operations and process level of the business, those 2 outside legs of the triangle. Let's say if we have this triangle, right? Let's have our imagination going here. From what modality is that? If you say authentic self, then you're on track. So we have our business, operations, and process, the outside legs. We have process over here. We have process within the business that could be manual, but also some of the processes are instilled in a system. And when you have the process that's instilled in the system, it should have the exact steps as you have it as a manual process. And of course, we have people operating in the process and the systems, those people being all levels of the organization. So let's talk about this. So talk about process from your standpoint. How important is a process for businesses?
It's crucial because without a process, everything can fall apart. There's no checks and balances if there's no process.
Absolutely. What's another good reason to have processes instilled in business?
Well, I think it's key to having efficiency. When people know what to do, they can repeat it, do it over and over. Yep. We mentioned, or we're going to talk about finding defects.
Absolutely.
If you don't have a process, you don't know when it's not working, right?
There you go. There you go. Absolutely. And that's a very key point of having a process, because when accountability sets in, whether it's positive or negative, you want to be able to have those checks and balances and understand where the defects are in the process and then apply the appropriate solution. So when we look at it from a global standpoint, well, let's talk about some of the processes that should be operational within the business. Now, I am under the impression, the auspice that, and I come from this position, that no matter what size your business is, you should have processes written down. You should have those processes in an organized location in an area, not just in your head. So talk about some of the other types of processes. I'll start with Al. What are some of the other processes that a business should have in operation?
Well, you need to have some type of hiring process. You need to have a sales process.
Absolutely.
You need to have some type of process as it relates to how you deliver your product or service.
Yep. Absolutely.
There's processes all around you. I won't take them all up because I know you asked.
What are the processes that you think about?
Inventory process.
Inventory process. What are the processes?
He took all of them.
Sales process, you have a certain sales process or business development process, marketing process. Got to have the marketing process down. And in fact, when you have your sales and marketing process down, those are for those businesses who are a bit smaller than larger organizations. And when you're able to step outside of the process and go learn some other skill sets. As an entrepreneur, we have to continue to increase our learning. As a business owner, as a business professional, we have to continue to increase our learning. Yeah. Processes allow us to step out of the business and then facilitate other learning opportunities. You were going to
I was going to add your training and development. You need to have
training
a process
and development
for that.
Absolutely.
Many people don't, as we find.
True.
It's critical.
It is critical. And having those processes will just make everything run smoothly. At the end of the day, there are 3 aspects of your accountability. We have talked about 12 areas of accountability. That's another video. But the latter 3 are efficiency, productivity, and profitability. When we talk about process, Yasmin, you think about those three words. How does that fit into the idea of accountability and the process of accountability?
All three of them, or all the...
Just the three latter ones.
Well, without a process, you won't know whether you are losing money if you don't have a process for the checks and balances or your balance sheet or P&L.
Right.
In order to know that, you have to have those processes in place. What were the other two? I know that
efficiency and productivity.
Efficiency, of course, you've got to know whatever solution that we have any deficiencies. If you apply a solution, whether it's efficient or not, if it's working or not.
Sure.
So without that process, you would never know.
Sure. Okay. All right. Good. How about you? Those three aspects. We talk about efficiency, we talk about productivity, and we talk about profitability. How are those instituted within the organization accountability?
Well, I think when you develop targets or you have a plan or a goal, that's maybe one of the major ways that you see it, right?
KPIs?
Are you headed to where you try to hit? Right?
Absolutely.
KPIs.
Right.
That buzzword. So I think that's where it's most critical.
Okay.
Which, if you don't know what that stands for, I know people who don't know what KPI stands for, is your key performance indicators. And every company has different key performance indicators. How they should.
Exactly.
They should have them.
Yes.
How they evaluate how they are performing. The performance is based on certain key performance indicators. That could be the safety, that could be the hiring, safety, sales. Okay. So different indicators that's how they measure how the company is performing.
Yeah. And we're accountable for, or we'll be held accountable, or we'll have accountability, we should have ownership, I should say, and be answerable for those KPIs. Every position in an organization has the roles and responsibilities. Those roles and responsibilities should also be integrated with the organizational, at least the high-level organizational KPIs, or key performance indicators. When you have that, when review time comes, when it's time to evaluate your status quo or your progress in the organization, now you have something that can be measured against and understanding how you're performing in that position. Different positions will have different KPIs, or should have different KPIs based on the job that description is doing. Now again, there are high-level KPIs that are integrated with accountability, and those high-level KPIs, everyone in the organization are striving or driving towards having those KPIs be as high as they can. You have to have those metrics, write those numbers down, and make sure that everything is good there. You want to add to that?
I think the most successful companies on the planet, they have those KPIs in place, and you can see it. And one of the organizations that comes to mind is Disney. I think maybe we were talking about a Disney vacation the other day, me and the wife. But the customer experience, right? The customer service experience when you go there. It doesn't matter if somebody's sweeping up trash, or they're operating a ride, or they're a photographer. As a customer, you're number one. You get a certain feel when you go to that park, regardless of who you interact with. So I just think that's a great example of, I don't know what the specific KPI is, but there is one that they all adhere to that makes you feel good about customer.
They're known for their customer service. And another company that comes to mind is Amazon, and theirs is productivity. How soon they can get the packages out on time, and the deliverables. How quickly they can deliver the deliveries, that's important to them, because that is one of the key performance indicator for their productivity and profitability.
And we are all responsible as we are doing our daily tasks, especially for those key positions. Those of you who are at the C-level executive, we're definitely responsible for the profitability of the organization, right? Stakeholder value. How much value are we adding to other key stakeholders? How much value are we adding to the company? Whether you're a public company, or you have another set of KPIs that come into place if you're traded on the stock exchange. So you have these opportunities within the organization to continue to strive towards certain milestones based on performance. And this is where we have this accountability aspect come in. Now, the process is important. And we're going to talk about the process in two different ways. One, We're going to first talk about what the truth is, T.R.U.T.H. We're going to talk about those steps. And then, we'll mention that's only utilized if you have a defect. If you don't have a defect, let's say everything goes right with the project or whatever you're doing, then we go from the T to the H. And we'll be explaining that a little bit further. So let's go ahead and dive into that. All right, truth, accountability. You want to add something else first? Okay. Truth. Truth, accountability is an acronym. So T stands for?
Tell yourself and others that you will operate with integrity.
With integrity. For me, that's an important one. Why is integrity important when we talk about accountability?
Well, I think it's critically important because if you're not the same in every situation or circumstance as it relates to your operation in business, then your productivity is going to be off, your efficiencies will be off.
Sure.
So it's important to be the same. There's also, when we deal with honesty, whether you're telling I know it's an acronym, but
sure,
telling the truth about what's going on, all those things tie into that T.
Right.
And if you don't do that, another thing is you can have challenges going on and you don't say anything about it. Then you set the company up or the organization as a whole up for failure.
Yeah.
It's a lot of different aspects that tie into you being that person. You have an integrity regardless of what's going on, whether you mess up or not.
Absolutely.
That type of thing.
Yep.
And also treating people with integrity, making sure that you are treating everyone equally. If a task is being done, you don't hold other people to different standards.
Yeah.
Sure.
Having the same standards for everyone, that to me is integrity as well.
Okay, good. And I'll build on what they both said because that's absolutely true. We also look at integrity from the standpoint of how do we, excuse me, how can we utilize, let me give you an example. So there was this one leader who gave kudos to, or the team, the organization gave kudos to this one other gentleman, right? And so and it was his subordinate. But what he did was he actually, because he wasn't operating in integrity from my standpoint, actually took also the kudos and made it for himself too, or added himself to the kudos, which is, again, from my standpoint, that's operating out of integrity. You also have the time when someone comes up with a great idea, someone comes up with a new product, service, whatever, then someone, or a magical little process that you're going to utilize to grab this client, and then someone else goes and take that idea and present it as theirs, right? So that's operating out of integrity. So integrity is the check and balance to understand how you're going to show up the same every single time, making sure you have those checks and balances. So integrity is really, really key. Now, the key point here is you need to tell yourself you're going to operate with integrity, meaning that we teach that accountability is a conversation. There are a lot of times I'm talking to myself and somebody may say, what do you say? I'm like, oh, talking to myself. How many times have we done that? Having that conversation with oneself, and it should be had even before we get into the workplace environment, and still operating in integrity, making sure that when we come to the table, we're operating in this complete integritous manner. So integrity is extremely important. You have to have that first.
Right.
Because we can't be pointing the finger, blaming Al, pointing the finger, blaming Yasmin. Right. There are times when we have to stand up and own up to what transpired based on the task that was at hand.
As the leader of Granison, I believe that if you have a team, you always highlight the team first.
Absolutely.
It was us. If there's a creation, like most of the companies now, part of your job description, especially in tech industry, is that you have to be creative and innovative.
Right.
And if you have come up with an innovation and you as a leader steal that idea from one of your team members, that is terrible.
Absolutely.
But what you can do is, hey, highlight the entire team. As a team, we have come up with an idea, but also give kudos to the person who has the main idea.
Sure.
But it's teamwork, because without teamwork, that person may not have come up with that idea or any idea. So innovation and creativity is huge right now, and then dealing with integrity is important.
I want to add something. You mentioned having that conversation with yourself. It's important to have that conversation ahead of time with yourself before you get into various situations and circumstances. It is a way to set a boundary, set a standard for yourself. Because if you wait till a situation happens, and then you want to think about this process, the potential consequences are going to be tied to whether you decide to operate with integrity or not. So you need to draw the line in the sand way ahead of time to make sure that you don't cross it. Because if you don't, it is sand. And that line will be fuzzy, it'll fade away. Exactly.
The do's and the don'ts of integrity.
Another thing about accountability, though, folks, remember this. It often, very, very often rolls up one level, at least one level up. So even if someone below you is getting accolades, kudos, getting the credit for something, a lot of times the boss, the superior, the higher level superior is going to look at the boss as well and say, hey, great job on training this person or whatever it may be. So you're going to be involved in it. Now, double-edged sword. Remember, balance, pendulum swings both ways. When something happens on the negative side and your subordinate does it, accountability also still rolls up one level. So remember that point. So when we have the opportunity to give kudos, boom, go ahead and do that. When you have opportunities to have someone take ownership of what they did, remember it's going to roll up to you too. So what do you think about that in terms of how accountability rolls up one level above the person who actually did the task?
As far as I'm concerned, if anything went wrong, I would rather protect my team. I would take the blame. I'm the leader. I'm accountable.
Ultimately, leaders are accountable.
To me, no matter who did wrong on my team,
you are answerable.
I'm going to protect them. I'm going to shield them. But later on in privacy, hey, we could have done it different. But I am ultimately accountable for whatever goes wrong with my team.
I agree with that. I think if you play the blame game or you pass the buck when it comes to that, then you alienate your team. You lose the ability to motivate them,
lower morale,
influence them, lower morale, all those things that result from that. On the flip side, I think it's just important to know that the credit does roll up. So you don't have to try to position yourself strategically to get credit.
I've seen that too.
If you're a great leader, a great manager, it's going to show in the performance of those that you manage, which automatically is going to be a reflection on you.
Absolutely.
We'll talk about this later on. We have our conversation on leadership and developing or creating high-performing teams. Accountability is one of those aspects of high-performing teams that is very, very strong. So we have the T there. We're going to tell yourself that you are going to operate with honesty and integrity. What's the R?
Reveal the problem, the issue, or the situation.
Remember, we talk about defects. A defect is a problem, issue, or if there's a situation, something at hand that now needs to be fixed. So we have to reveal it some way. So let's talk about the revealing aspect of it. What do you want to on
that ties into the integrity we were talking about before. But if something goes wrong, talk about it.
Talk about it.
And it's important to have some savvy, I'll say, of what level the challenge or the problem or the defect needs to be for it to be exposed. Right? So you have a conversation about it. But when there is one, don't try to cover it up. You need to bring it out in the open, have a conversation about it. One, so that it won't hurt anybody else, but also you have everybody working to fix that.
What do you say?
And you said this last time, Al, that there are certain problems that don't need to be revealed if they're fixed immediately. So if it's an immediate fix, you don't have to reveal it, but still...
You just took my question.
I was reading your mind.
There we go.
So you fix the issue, but you still have to document it that, we did it this way, this is what happened, but we fixed it and this was the fix.
Right. Or if it's... the other part of that conversation was the level of the problem. Because there is a certain amount of responsibility that you have in the role to solve problems. Problems come up every day. So it's not something that you got to blast out and expose every time.
Blow it out of proportion.
Or if you know it's something, the defect is related to you being tired or, things like that. You were sick that day. That's not a conversation we need to have, right? You fix that and move on. But if it is tied to the systems, the process, things like that, you need to make sure that it's revealed so that you can fix it.
And that came up in a conversation we had earlier about does the boss really need to know about the issue, the defect that happened? And both of what they are saying is apropos for that particular solution. Right. Is it detrimental to the company and it needs to be communicated to someone that's going to affect other departments? Or is it related to this project, it's a minor issue and you can resolve it yourself? Perhaps even let the boss know later on, after it's already fixed, hey, this happened, if it's warranted, correct? So you're going to gauge. That's what I was talking about. That's where the savviness of leadership comes into play. Understanding when to say just the right amount of information or give the right amount of information, and when to expose a bit more of the information and get collective mindsets in order to solve the problem in the process and improve the process. So we continue on our journey with this, outlaying this process. And again, this is something you can take back and utilize within your process, within your organization right now. Start utilizing this truth accountability process, and there's a certain way to implement it. There's a way to permeate it throughout the organization effectively. You can feel free to contact us for that. Information will be later on. But you also want to have that going for the organization, because you want to have a systematic way. You hire someone new, issue comes up, where can I go? What, is there a booklet? Is there something on the system that I can look at, find the steps on how to resolve an issue and be able to do that? So now we're going to fast forward to the U, which is?
Unveil and identify an appropriate solution.
Unveil and understanding the appropriate solution. When we hear that within the U, unveiling and finding an appropriate solution, what comes to mind?
Well, that part is, I would say that's the work part of the process, right? Figuring out what an appropriate solution will be, and all the factors around that. You know, how much money or time. You know, the 6 most important questions.
Yes. Who, what, why, where, and now.
Yes,
exactly.
Ask around that.
Perfect.
So that you can find the appropriate solution, and then, you know, eventually implement it.
And that could be one of the lengthier process in the process.
Sure.
Is to find a solution.
Depending on the gravity of the problem.
Depending on the gravity of the problem.
Yep. Unveil it, making sure that we understand the appropriate solution is that solution, which actually, once you have that, immediately segues into the next area here, which is the T for
test and implement the solution.
Testing and implementing the solution. Some solutions might not need a test. There are a myriad, I should say, of solutions that do need testing. Why is it appropriate to test the solution first?
Well, that's the only way, in many cases, that you can understand whether it works or not.
Yep. For you?
Same thing. I mean, if it doesn't work, you got to go back and find another solution.
Yep.
So, absolutely.
And then when you're in process improvement mode within the organization, that's one of the stronger points that's really going to help you improve the process faster. Going into our modality, how we execute, having the savvy and making sure that we utilize and creating, let me go back to unveil, understanding that unveiling takes this whole expansive mindset depending on, again, the gravity of the problem. You may have to utilize your imagination, think outside the box, making sure, and all those key words I was just saying are intertwined in our program in the modalities, understanding what are the tools that you have available to you in order to come up with this appropriate solution, then testing it. Also, you can be creative in testing it. Can we do this a different way? Do we have to do it the same way every single time? Because when we do it this way, we get this outcome, and we don't want that outcome. So making sure we have that information. Then once we come up with the appropriate solution, and the appropriate solution to me looks like it's the one that we can implement the fastest, with the most accuracy and the most timely manner, and making sure we get that done. 6 strategies of execution, that's what we're talking about there. How do we do that? Making sure we do that effectively so that efficiency goes up, productivity is sustained or even increased, and profitability is sustained or increased as well. Last step in the process, the H is?
Harvest feedback and document lessons learned.
Such an important step in this process. Why is it important to you?
All right, well, for two reasons. One, if you ever encounter a problem again, you know how to fix it.
Yep.
It's just a simple, revisiting what you did versus trying to remember all the details. And then the other part is it can be duplicatable elsewhere within the organization.
Right.
If they're having a similar problem, it's a matter of them reviewing what you did, and then they can fix it without it taking the time and the energy that it took you to solve it the first time.
Right.
It saves time, and also it helps with training other people.
Sure, absolutely. And if you have the process or the information, it should be in some sort of centralized location that people can access it from anywhere. That's going to be the best solution. So some cloud-based system or server-based system that has access to the cloud for those people who work within the organization. Where can I go? Almost like having a knowledge base, if you think about it that way. Where can I go to get these lessons learned? The documents that we have in terms of the feedback we got in terms of how do we solve this problem. That's a critical step. That step, when organizations, when we start talking about, that one's probably, I would say that one's left out the most in terms of making sure the feedback is there and documenting lessons learned and storing them somewhere where we can have access to them. Let's talk about final thoughts on the whole entire process. Yasmin.
To me, the whole integrity to me is the most important, of course. Without integrity, none of the steps would make any difference. So integrity, handling yourself with integrity. If there is an issue, identifying the issue, solving the problem.
Right.
By testing it, you got to test it first, and then documenting it.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Important for you?
I think it is the process that overlays all processes. You know, if you work this, you will position yourself to be able to be accountable in a systematic way,
Right.
For yourself and for organization.
Right.
So I think it's important to have that.
Sure.
For your success and the success of the company, yes.
Final thought on this side, if you have a positive outcome for whatever task you had, no matter how difficult it is, if there are no defects, still truth comes into the T, comes into aspect. Tell yourself to operate with integrity. Everything goes right. Go right down to the last part. Document the lessons learned. Get the feedback. Harvest feedback. Document lessons learned. That's going to be the other steps will not come into play because there's no defect. We've measured up with our process and the system. Everything looks good. So look at the scores, the starting position, then the end result. We got the result we wanted. Okay, good. Let's go ahead and document some information that could help someone else in the organization, perhaps even somewhere else around the organization globally. All right, that's our conversation for today on the truth accountability process. I'm Grandison Shines here with
Yasmin Murray.
And Al Gleason, the curator of nonsense.
All right, folks, until next time, talk to you later.
See you.